welcome to In the Spotlight with Quocirca, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Luella Fernandez, Director of Quocirca, and today I'm joined by Sylvie Thomas, Head of Sustainability Policies and CSR at Lexmark. Today we'll be discussing Lexmark's role in the sustainability ecosystem, particularly its initiatives around blockchain, IoT, and the circular economy. Okay, so welcome to the show, Sylvie. It's great to have you here today. Could you tell us a bit about yourself and your career history today and your role at Lexmark today?
Yeah, sure. So initially, I have nothing to do with sustainability. I have a master's degree in international business and marketing. And I started working in the digital sector more than 25 years ago already. And I embarked a sustainability topic in the early age of 2000. And I did start sustainability positions in 2005. So it's been a while. I was an early bird working in sustainability. I have been working on the materiality of our company's impact, and mostly it was the environment. So for years, I really focused on initially on making sure that we set up the right reverse logistic, we have the right recycling programs, and slowly but surely it became a huge cost for us to have these massive returns of products. So we had to invent new solutions. So I did participate actively in rethinking the business model so that we can remanufacture and reuse our products for several lives. So, and for the last 3 years now, I also take care about legislative approach. So I'm the head of the EMEA sustainability policies, working in the government affairs. And here there's a long way to go as well, with many upcoming legislations that will push the company to embrace in a faster way sustainability. And I'm glad that Lexmark has already started the journey in a very early age, is a clear leader in recycling, in remanufacturing, and using reclaimed plastics. So that will help to be ready for these upcoming legislations for sure.
Yeah, so sustainability is definitely moving higher on the agenda, and particularly in the print industry. So you've given a bit of brief history there. Could you tell us a bit more about your role at Lexmark today, and also Lexmark's approach to sustainability? I think particularly with your strategy in the circular economy.
It happens that we inherited from the very early age, back to 1991, from IBM, of a collection program with a strong reverse logistic angle. And we really built our differentiators upon sustainability, so that we have, invested massively in making our production centers more energy efficient, consuming less water and polluting less, as well as designing products that are designed to last longer. So regarding operations, like just to give you an idea, between 2005 when I started and 2015, we had already reduced by more than 50% the CO2 emissions. And right now, back to last year now, we have announced our goal to be carbon neutral by 2035. But we keep on working on reducing the impact of our operations, and we already at the intermediary stage of a reduction of 34% in global greenhouse gas emissions. So we have this angle, and also the experience of life cycle assessment that we've done very early. It's now more than 10 years that we publish them publicly online for each printer product. But that also helps us to understand what is the materiality of our products and where we should make big efforts. So we continue with efforts. I could talk a lot about the global strategy, but basically, yes, we've been recognized since 2014 by the EcoVadis Extra Financial Assessment with the gold medal during 7 years. And last week, we've just learned that we had reached the highest level with the platinum rating. So it's really an honor as well to see that all these efforts are now recognized by external stakeholders as well.
Yeah, and that's really interesting to hear about Lexmark's heritage in sustainability, like you sort of described there, how it started off with IBM and how you've been doing these life cycle assessments for some time now. And I think it's really interesting to see how Lexmark's positioning itself in terms of its differentiators. And you mentioned a couple of things there, which I really want to pick up on. So, I think, particularly you mentioned reverse logistics, but I also know you do things around blockchain in terms of how to achieve a more sustainable and effective supply chain. So could you maybe share a bit about what Lexmark's doing in those areas?
Yeah, sure. Actually, as you know, Lexmark is strongly committed to the circular economy, and it does started by our Lexmark cartridge collection program. So we have an extensive collection network, and also we have a double virtuous circle, like we do collect the cartridge back, but also then we will, with the ones that are supposed to be sent to recycling, we will basically reuse the plastic materials. And thanks to this closed loop strategy, not only we are successful in reusing 72% of the cartridges that we have put on the market, but as well, they do include on average more than 39% recycled or reclaimed plastic, which is an industry leader position right now. So based on this experience, we continued, I would say, our commitment to the circular economy and our research on circular economy under a program that is sponsored by Horizon 2020, which is the innovation and research program of the EU, because actually the e-waste or electronic waste is one of the fastest growing waste streams in the world. The study shows that last year we had 57 million tons of waste that were generated, and only less than 1/5 of it officially collected for recycling. So as it's supposed to keep growing to reach like 74 million tons by 2030, there's something to do in the industry. So Lexmark was the only player, OEM, in the print industry to be granted this opportunity. And really the project here is done with other players like TVs players or in the white good industries, and we really want to be a role model in this place. So the project really focus on creating value or new business models of circular economy that can be easily adopted by other manufacturers. So we have some key lessons like refurbishing, can bring a lot of added value in this model if you can consider that the cosmetic criteria are not as important, or if you have a good reverse logistic. And again, the reverse logistic is critical, and Lexmark has won a great experience into this project. So to sum up, on the C service, the research found that price and quality remain an issue when it comes to boosting the refurbishment market or the remanufacturing activities more broadly. I would say that remanufacturing is even a higher standard in terms of best practices, but would cost more because it's a full industrial process where you will review and check all the features of the products and make sure they are as good as a new product that you just put on the market. Refurbishing, reconditioning can be an alternative, a cheaper option where you really make sure that you have a good quality products that can be extended in its life. This brings substantial savings for companies and users. And when I talk about savings as sustainability manager, I also talk about environmental savings, because this project has shown that refurbishing typically a printer can help reduce by 50% the CO2 emissions over the life cycle of the product. So pretty interesting. Blockchain, maybe now if you want, unless you have more question on this C-Service project.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think it's really interesting to hear that Lexmark's the only print manufacturer in that project at the moment. So I think we'll definitely put some information in the show notes if anybody wants to get more information about that particular project. So is that a global project or European only?
It's a European only. It's sponsored by the Horizon 2020, which is the EU Commission Innovation and Research Program. But yeah, we can put a link.
Okay, great. Yeah, and if you could, tell us a bit about blockchain, because I think that's a really interesting sort of emerging technology that's been applied in a lot of other areas. But I think in the print industry, it's still very much at the kind of nascent stage. So yeah, if you could maybe tell us a bit about how Lexmark's applying blockchain.
Yeah, it's a very new area of investigation. As you know, blockchain has been mainly used by Bitcoins. And the beauty of the blockchain is that it's a safe and secure way of transferring the data. It's also increasingly used by, for example, by the medical industry to secure the personal data of the patients. And actually, it's spreading, and it's something that we are really interested in, because when it comes to providing recycling or repair or refurbishment of products, and especially if you're working with providers of these services that need to understand or to be able to identify the correct value of the products, you need to secure the data that you're transferring, and we need to have certainties around the fact that where a product comes from, what are the materials that are used, are there dangerous materials? For example, if you think about how the product will be managed at the end of its life. But you also need all the pieces of information that have been actually used during the while the customers was using the product. So you need to understand if the product is still in good conditions, if it's damaged but repairable. So all of this data is absolutely critical to understand from the very beginning, from the extraction of materials to the very end of life when it will finally be recycled. So the idea behind is actually in reality to give a product like a material passport, or we call it a digital passport. And the main issue is that manufacturers can be really resistant because it can reveal sensitive information, such as the design concept or some proprietary data, and this data might be protected by IP and patents. So using the blockchain, which is currently the safest way of transferring data, is very interesting. And blockchain might be an enabling technology that using cryptographic data and captures the data in the decentralized way that secure all the parties that you're using the digital passport.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I think there's obviously a huge opportunity for blockchain to be applied to really, like you say, create these digital passports or identities for different products and actually be able to get that transparency into the whole of the supply chain. And I guess that's a key challenge for many, not just in the print industry, but any technology manufacturer, how they can actually analyze the whole footprint of a device, but also the kind of, when you look at Scope 3 emissions, that's very much around the broader value chain. And I guess that has an application there in terms of actually being able to analyze and measure the actual footprint across the whole of the value chain that's involved in that production. So you talked quite a bit there about remanufacturing and refurbishment. And before we sort of move on to remanufacturing a bit, I just wanted to really sort of ask you to clarify the difference between refurbishment of a device and remanufacturing, because I think it can be a bit of a a grey area. My understanding is refurbishment is, typically when a device comes back and it's updated and maybe tested and refurbished to go back in the market, whereas remanufacturing is being built from scratch, potentially with components that have been used before. So yeah, maybe if you could just clarify that distinction.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, actually, there are several definitions, and at EU level, we are not always in agreement. But I would say, to make it simple, refurbishing or reconditioning is a practice that is quite common in for example, the smartphone industry. I would say I would position refurbishing slightly lower in the hierarchy compared to remanufacturing. For remanufacturing, yes, you still collect the products, and there are several options. Either you dismantle everything and you clean and you rebuild something from scratch, as you mentioned, but you may also be led, if the product is in good condition, and actually, as Lexmark build our printers to last longer, more than 7 years, our customers' practices are usually to keep them 4, 5 years. So when we collect them back, they are in pretty good condition still, unless they had a heavy usage. And in that case, I mean, you would use industrial processes, high level, to check all the features and not only the main features. And that may be a difference between refurbishing and remanufacturing. Yeah, really, you check everything and you replace parts that needs to be replaced, either with new components, but it can be also refurbished or reclaimed components. It can be components that will use also reuse plastics or reuse materials. So as long as you can ensure a high quality level.
Yeah, so based on that, I know Lexmark has again, been sort of delivering quite strong strategies around remanufacturing, and I think it's with its Evergreen product offering. So could you tell us a bit about Lexmark's heritage in that space, and what your future plans are as well?
Yeah, well, we have a strong position towards what I personally call planned durability, but to be more correct, we can also refer to intentional engineering. So aside from working on establishing reverse logistic processes and gear up marketing effort for refurbished product, the best approach if you want to provide your customers with a major differentiator is obviously intentional engineering. So we actively participate in the circular economy by designing cartridges that are on purpose designed for many lives. It is as well the case for parts, and we incorporate recycled materials to help protect the natural resources. And regarding devices, we know that most devices in the past in the industry were built to live 3 to 5 years, and actually we started very early, more than 7 years ago, to design products that are designed to last longer. So this is an area where we want to keep boosting. The C-Service project help us to understand how we can better maximize the lifetime of the product. We have smart refresh programs with customers when we help them to keep the products longer. So that's an interesting option. We also have a decarbonation program to help our customers tackle themselves their own climate neutral goals. And we have a partnership with Print Relief that we have applied to Lexmark, since we have offset all the print pages in the world for more than 7 years now, including the test pages that we produce in our manufacturing centers. So I'm talking about millions of pages. And we now help our customers to offset their paper impact, because actually, if you take the full printing system, the paper has the biggest environmental impact, unfortunately. So it's important we can get our customers together. Yeah, that's it. I don't know. We have many also of a project around Internet of Things and how we can help a customer to eliminate the IT burden and to go for the green digital transition. So I can talk a little bit about that, or I can give you an overview if you want before we conclude on our next phases for the Lexmark sustainability journey. Up to you.
Yeah, no, well, I think it's really interesting because we've been doing quite a bit of analysis around print sustainability, the market, and what different vendors are doing. And I think obviously for any technology supply, I suppose there are two main goals. One is to reduce their own environmental impacts, like you say, through these circular practices, but also how are they helping customers reduce their environmental impact? And I think print manufacturers are really well positioned to help their customers, reach their own sustainability goals, like you mentioned. And I was just curious in terms of the services and solutions. You mentioned a couple there with Print Relief, for example, but do you have any examples of customers that are really moving to sustainable procurement? So, maybe they are looking for remanufactured devices, or they're looking for Lexmark to support them with sustainability assessments. Again, you sort of touched a bit upon that earlier. So just wondering, how much you're seeing that accelerating perhaps over the past year, and, the types of customers that you might be working with in that area.
Yeah, sure. Actually, more and more we are led to working very closely with our customers, not only in a supply customer relationship, but really like a partners. I have a pretty interesting customer in mind with NHS. NHS is the largest employer in the UK. And they are responsible for like the 4-5% supposedly of the England total carbon footprint. So I can tell you they are not only working in the health arena, but they are also very concerned about climate change. So they have set up also their own neutral goals in different stages, and what we do with them is working on the procurement, but also understanding how we can bring value to their business and social value through their procurement practices, but also all along the use phase once they will use the MFPs. What they have done, and we have decided together, is that at 10% of the purchases will be dedicated to criteria that bring social value to their company, but also to the world, I would say, to the society in which we live and work, so all together. So they have selected like 5 topics around well-being, obviously the COVID recovery, but also topics like reducing the inequalities. And 2 of them are directly linked to what Lexmark can provide as a support in tackling the economic inequality by creating new business models, new jobs opportunities, but also creating supply chain resilience and capacity. And the last theme for them is how we can help fighting climate change. So one interesting discussion we had was around finance and procurement. So we can question financing people. So should they keep, for example, putting pressure on procurement teams for them to save costs, or should we rather monitor the CO2 impact and understand and set up a criteria of reduction of the CO2 impact? So this is something we've discussed together, how we can legitimately help them to provide this shift. At Lexmark, we have embraced an emerging technology that is called the Internet of Things. So if you're familiar with it, yes, you know that things describe actually objects that are connected to the internet. And we came from the point that, yes, in the world, we manage millions of devices that are connected together, and these devices are printers. But we could connect all other kind of connected objects. So this is a new area where we started to bring value to our customers outside of the printer industry. But still, if we want to come back to the print industry, that Lexmark printers are loaded with hundreds of sensors that continuously monitor all kinds of data points. That includes alert, internal diagnostic, and all the data about the working of the printer. And things like the motor voltage or the fan speeds or the temperature, all of this is covered by this data analytics, and that helps us to understand, for example, if we will have devices that will need to be repaired, and we can run predictive services analysis ahead, eliminating the need of having a technician to go on site to repair the product, because we can easily understand what will be the weakness. So thanks to these hundreds of data points that our devices are continuously monitoring, we can tell in a very precise way the kind of information that is needed to better manage a fleet with our customers. So again, here you see that more and more we are talking about combining data-driven intelligence using blockchain when we want to understand how we can improve the data information, or the data transfer of information over the whole value chain, from the first tier suppliers to the very end recycler, but also how we can help our customers to be more sustainable themselves. So
yeah, no, that's really interesting case studies there. And I think it just really shows some of the innovations that Lexmark are really driving around sustainability, because I think, generally there's, in the industry, there's a lot of focus around the hardware, energy usage, and maybe long life consumables and so on. But I think it's a much broader opportunity for companies to really, like you say, use analytics and data-driven approaches to understand their print environment. And also our research is showing that a lot of organizations are, clearly reducing paper usage as well as part of their environmental initiatives. And, I'm just wondering whether you're seeing that, because I think that NHS example is really valuable in terms of showing how the public sector, they're kind of very much focusing on, digitalization. We've got digital government initiatives underway, globally, I guess, but, particularly in the UK. And as part of that, how does print fit into that? And are your customers looking at, sort of reducing paper usage, but also using Lexmark to integrate digital workflows as well, and, support them on their kind of digital transformation journey?
Actually, more and more, the legislation is pushing also the public accounts, I would say, to clearly go more digital and to select more stringent criteria, definitively. But we feel like there is still a learning curve that is needed, and it's the case as well of major private accounts. So I think we have a role to play. We have the knowledge, we have the technology to enable the change for other industry players, and to accelerate the transition to the circular economy, or to the green IT best practices.
Yeah, and I think you raised some just really great points, and I think there's a real opportunity for the managed print service providers to really enhance their offerings to include these assessments and sustainability solutions, and particularly for the channel, sort of to move away from that kind of hardware focused engagement to build broader solutions and services that can help their customers reduce environmental impact. So definitely be watching to see what Lexmark is doing in that space. And it's such a big topic, and we're obviously just focusing on the environmental side, but you mentioned the social side with the NHS customer, and obviously governance as well, the G of ESG, cyber security, and so on. And it's such a broad and complex topic, but it's been great to get your insights on the sustainability side of things. So in terms of what Lexmark is doing, you've really sort of helped us understand its focus on data-driven sustainability, IoT, and the circular economy. But what's next for Lexmark in terms of its own sustainability journey, and perhaps what other services and solutions it will be offering its customers to reduce their environmental impact?
So I often answer to this question by saying we are going to keep doing the same, because all this stuff, data-driven technology, leveraging IoT is really new. So this is something that we need to keep embarking with our customers and the customer journey, but also with all our customers, because we still have a lot of customers that are in a traditional mode, not in the managed print service mode, or really purchasing single units, which without thinking about how they will be managed in the network, without using the cloud and so on. And clearly, we became a clear leader in preventing electronic waste, and this is something that we want to continue. We want to help taking the circular economy to a new level. So we will certainly, obviously, continue the experience with the Sea Service, but also with other EU-funded projects. And I would say another angle that would be important for us is to maintain as much as we can business inside the European continent. Because we believe that it's better to be closer to the region of consumption. We have a goal of manufacturing more than 80% of cartridges typically in the European continent. So yeah, these are stuff that are very important and reducing our own impact. So that's why we have set up the objective of reaching carbon neutrality by 2035. This means a lot working with our biggest factories across the globe, and also more and more with our tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers. This is also something that is important for customers, and not only on the environment. They are very keen in understanding what are the labor practices and how we favor employee diversity, either also in the regions where we have suppliers and not especially direct Lexmark workforce. So the criteria of the expectations of our customers are growing. There is an acceleration in acknowledging that climate change is an important topic, but also how we can at the same time tackle the inequalities and bring more value and social value to the business. And this can only be done working all along the value chain with our suppliers, with our partners, and with our customers. And I can tell you we still have a long way to go as an industry. So it will be an interesting decade to come.
Yeah, no, it's been great. It's been really interesting to hear your insights. And, I've definitely learned something about Lexmark, and I'm sure it'll be really useful for the audience as well to just understand Lexmark's position, particularly with its circular initiatives and the kind of data-driven approach and IoT as well. So I really appreciate you taking the time to join me. I just wanted to end with a general question, which I'm asking all the guests. I know you've been focusing on sustainability in the digital sector for over 20 years, but what was your very first job, and are there any particular lessons that you've taken with that in your career?
Yeah, well, my very first job has nothing to do. Actually, I was selling wine in Japan. So I was based in Tokyo, and had set up an organization that was selling French wine. And what I have good lessons, actually very close to sustainability, because you need to adapt to change. You need to adapt to different culture, especially in Japan. And as a woman, a few years back, it was even worse, and it was quite difficult. And so you need resilience. and perseverance. And also when you're in a unknown environment, or like in Japan, selling wine at that time was like very astonishing, because they do not consume really wine goods. They would rather favor beers or things like that. So you need also to be to bring a bit of innovation in the approach you have to the market, and it's very close to sustainability. So yeah, resilience, being straightforward, happy girl, because you need to move things all the time. So this kind of things.
No, that's brilliant. That wasn't something I was expecting, because obviously we didn't hear this before. So no, that's great to hear. And, I think, like you say, we always can learn something from our very first job. So it's really interesting to see how that still applies today. But thanks again for joining me today, Sylvia. It's been a really interesting conversation, and I look forward to speaking to you again in the near future.
Thank you, Rita. Thank you.
So thank you for joining today's episode of In the Spotlight with Quocirca. For more information, please go to quocirca.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you on our next episode.